what's going on, Rooftop Leaders? One of the things that gave me the most challenge when I was doing my November 2019 TED Talk in Santa Barbara was talking about the opening story, the depression that I went through transitioning out of the military, the darkness that I went through, the lack of purpose, and ultimately ended up in my bedroom closet wondering whether or not I should take my life. And that was a very dark, embarrassing moment for me. And it was something that when I still wrestle with, even talking about right now, I cringe, and it's hard for me to do. It was certainly hard for me to do that first time in Santa Barbara in front of a room of a bunch of strangers. And what I kept telling myself was, you know what, no one wants to hear this, right? No one wants to hear what my challenges were with transition or my depression. People have enough problems in their own life, Scott. They don't need to hear you talking about what your biggest obstacle was, right? They're worried about their own stuff right now. Go out there and talk about something that lifts them up, which I fully intended to do, but I wanted to skip this part and get right to the part that lifts people up. That's what it felt like. And the reason, again, was because nobody wants to hear this. That's what I kept telling myself. But what I came to understand after I gave that talk was that people came up to me after the talk and have sent me notes on Facebook and Instagram, and thank you for those, by the way, saying, hey, you know what? This was exactly how I felt when I left the military. This is exactly how I feel right now. Thank you for helping me realize I'm not alone. Thank you for validating what I was going through. I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands of people have given that kind of feedback. And it has shown me the power of leading with our scars. And if you haven't watched the talk, Generosity of Scars, click the link and watch it, because it is such a powerful talk, and it's because it gets to the elements of struggle. And by telling something and sharing something that I really didn't think people wanted to hear, I overcame my own self-sabotage. I overcame my own resistance, as Stephen Pressfield calls it. And that's really what we're doing right now in Rooftop Leadership on these broadcasts. Is I want to spend 2020 talking about leadership in the context of leading with struggle, repurposing our struggle, leading with our scars. So what we're doing is every month I'm teeing up a new pain point. This month it's self-sabotage, and this is our final installment on it. We've talked about, things that are too daunting, overwhelming. We've talked about the imposter syndrome. We've talked about being too busy. And now we're talking about nobody wants to hear this. That's another form of self-sabotage. It's a first cousin of imposter syndrome, right? It's not good enough. What I have to say is just not something that people want to hear. And it's something that we need to work through as leaders. And I will tell you that leaders at every level deal with this. Leaders at the most senior level, I've seen 4-star commanders and business CEOs wrestle with the fact that no one wants to hear what I have to say. And I've seen junior leaders and business startups and nonprofits wrestle with the same thing. Young people deal with this all the time. I don't have anything to say right now, or no one wants to hear what I have to say. And this is a very, very dangerous pain point. It's a very, very dangerous form of self-sabotage, because what it does is it allows us to rationalize using some distorted logic to talk ourselves out of our higher selves, to talk ourselves out of our higher purpose, our higher calling, the impact, the tracks that we're meant to have in this world. And I don't want that to happen to you. Again, I think back to, had I listened to that voice in my head right before go time at the TED Talk that said, no one wants to hear this, what would have been the outcome? What would have been the outcome of that? There would have been a lot of people in a very dark place contemplating some very bad things to themselves that would not have heard that message. They would not have been afforded the opportunity to realize that they are not alone. Now, that's just one small example. That's my experience. But what about you? What about your experience? Where are those areas of your life right now where we need to hear from you? Your associates need to hear from you. Your clients need to hear from you, that you're pulling back from because you're telling yourself, no one wants to hear this. It's a dangerous thing to do because it muzzles your voice. And we all need your voice in the world. And I'm not just saying that, because when you put something out there that has that kind of courage, it has a profound effect on people. You know, there are lots of people where you are right now. You may think there aren't, but there are. And the more you're struggling and the more you're leaning into the demons and you're facing the obstacles, the more people that are in that same place. That's what I've found through rooftop leadership over the years. Is I'm astounded by the number of people from different industries and different disciplines who say, I'm exactly where you are, or I was exactly where you are now. And they find a connection in that, because the thing is that the general rule on this is that struggle is a universal singular. It's something that we all relate to, regardless of ethnicity or religion or race. We relate to struggle. We are creatures of struggle. We go through challenges in our life, and because we're social creatures and we live off connection, we're always looking for relatable human beings who've also been scuffed up, who also have scars, right? And if you are able to share your struggle, repurpose your scars in the service of others, then people do want to hear it. I can tell you that right now. When people don't want to hear it is when you get up there and you're just dumping, or it's just therapy, or you're just talking about it to show, a trauma fest or what you've been through. Look at me. It's for sympathy. That's when people don't want to hear it. But if you're sharing it courageously in the service of other people to maybe help them get a sense of their own life and what's possible for their own life by learning from your struggle, listen, you're doing what humans have done at a primal level for 100,000 years. You're doing what elicits reciprocity from the other party, where they want to do something for you now, right? It's the most legitimate, authentic way to lead people, to sell, to move people to take action, to get people to follow your vision, right? So that little voice that's telling you people don't want to hear this, when you hear that, that's an indicator to go the other way, to lean into it, to press your shoulder up against the dragon and push harder, right? Because that's what this is all about. So what does that look like? What's some of the criteria for that? Well, it's really pretty simple. Try to use story whenever you're doing this. When I talked about the challenges of Army transition, I could have just talked about that, but instead I told a story of standing in my closet holding a pistol. You'll have to watch the rest of the talk to see that. But that was a story. But in that story, I shared my pain, right? I shared my pain because we are creatures of pain. We operate off of pain, right? And I shared that pain, and then I talked about what I learned and how I changed, because the reality is what your audience need, what your clients need, what your employees need, what your children need when you communicate to them with narrative competence and story is they need characters. And if that character is you, great, but they need that character defined. We need to know what that character's goals were. And then we need tension. We need obstacles. We need struggles in the way of those goals. And then we need to see change at the end. Something you learned, how you physically or mentally or spiritually changed. The resolution. It doesn't have to be a happy ending. But we need to see the arc, the change in that character. And if you do that, guys, as a leader, you're going to have a deeper impact. And my promise to you, though, is when you do that, if you're authentic and you're relatable, you are going to hear that little voice say, no one wants to hear this, right? That's the self-sabotage that's going to show up. That's what's going to put itself between you and leading with your scar. Don't listen to that. Move through that. That's why we want to train and rehearse our story, right? Because this is actually how humans learn about the world. We are wired to listen autobiographically to other people's stories. We make a connection, and then we step into that narrative bubble, and we find safety in that story of struggle, and we process our own life. That breeds reciprocity and connections. It deepens the relationships. It accelerates trust and learning. All the things that we need to do to lead in this world. It's authentic, it's true, it's real. But it takes courage, right? It takes a whole different kind of courage. And the universe rewards leaders with courage. right? And this is not the hands on the hips bravado talking about everything's great. The courage to share your scars, the courage to overcome the little voice that says no one wants to hear this, because the opposite of fear is not courage, it's love, right? And love informs courage, love of the people you're sharing this with. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. Just remind yourself of that, and it'll take you right where you need to go, even though your knees are buckling and you feel that bile rising up in your throat. That's what leaders do. That's how we lead from the rooftop. So push through that little voice that says, no one wants to hear this, because the reality is there's someone in a dark place that needs to hear exactly that message. And if you don't give it to them, who will? Thanks for what you do. Thanks for all the work that you've put into watching the vlogs and sharing them with your tribe. This January, we'll have a new pain point next month. But for right now, please share this video with someone who can use it. If you haven't seen the TED Talk Generosity of Scars, give it a look and share it with folks out there who need to see it. There's warriors and military family members and people who are struggling in dark places that need this message. Thanks for what you do. We'll see you on the rooftop.